research is that when you had the same kind of atmosphere of carbon dioxide and the temperatures that we're heading towards, sea levels were several meters higher than they are right now. The risks to the world's great cities are tremendously large. And what we're finding is that, of course, comes from the disintegration of the ice sheets, Antarctica, Greenland, and that's happening. They're melting or they're falling into the ocean because often they're kept on the land, these glaciers, by part of the ice being underwater. The water in which the glacier is sitting is warming up, so the buttress that keeps this massive ice sheet from falling into the ocean is itself disappearing. And then you get calving or massive breaking up of the ice sheet. So it's not just the gradual melting, it's actually the disintegration of part of the ice sheet also that we risk, which means sudden, serious increases of sea level, unpredictable. No one knows the year, certainly not the date, but the risk is very real. And looking at what the scientists call the paleoclimate record, meaning the prehistoric record that they can decipher using chemical signals, isotopic measurements, and so forth, it's a bad sign that we're heading towards a kind of climate that is so different from the climate that humanity has evolved and developed civilization, and that the risks are absolutely profound. The governments defined 6 years ago a threshold, a level, a guardrail it's sometimes called. They said we must not let global warming go above 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. We're about halfway there. What the number refers to is the temperature compared to before industrialization started, so say around 1800. We've increased the temperature on the planet almost 1 degree Celsius, and that means about 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit already. Not quite, but just about. And so we're about halfway there, Charlie, and the trajectory that we're on, according to what the climate models and forecasts say, is that we'll not only reach 2 degrees Celsius, 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees is possible by the end of this century on our current trajectory. It's an extraordinarily short period of time that we have left to make the change to a safe energy system. What this is all about is getting out of the carbon-based energy, the coal, oil, and gas, and getting to the wind, the solar, the other safe kinds of energy that could stabilize the climate. Carbon is the story, and decarbonization is the operative phrase of what we need to do. We need to decarbonize the world energy system. And we grew up as a world economy, as a modern era, with a fossil fuel-based energy system.
Lots of people now seem in favor of a tax on carbon.
That is one of the tools that definitely needs to be used to give a signal.
But am I wrong about that? My impression is people that I'm surprised by are in favor of a carbon tax.
And I think people would be surprised to know that even the oil companies, many of them are saying, let's get this underway, let's make it predictable. And so Shell and other companies are saying, we need a carbon tax. It's really something. It's quite striking, because everyone that looks at this scientifically knows that this is an incredibly dangerous path. And we've been basically spinning our wheels for now more than 20 years since we signed a climate treaty. We haven't implemented it, so the time is really running out to keep some measure of safety.
And you have said that the UN meeting in Paris
we have
taken out 2 degrees.
Yes. We have actually 3 big negotiations coming up in just the next few months. It just happened that this is the diplomatic overload. Paris, that is the last chance to stay below this limit that has been set, this threshold or guardrail. Then, a few weeks before Paris, in September, we're supposed to adopt Sustainable Development Goals. And then a few weeks before that, There is a
We being the
we
United
being
Nations.
the 193 member states of the UN. They say we, I'm over there with the General Assembly, but that's exactly what it means. It means the whole world, basically.
And all eyes are on China.
Well, China's eyes are on the U.S., thank you. And
China's saying,
China's saying,
you've been doing it along the way up.
China's saying, look, you do it, we'll do it. And for a long time, the United States has said to China, you do it, we'll do it. I think we're finally coming together. Last November was the major when President Obama and President Xi made an agreement together that basically said for the first time, we're going through the door together. And the rest of the world sighed a huge sigh of relief, said, thank goodness the two biggest economies in the world are finally working together on this. China and the U.S. have also agreed to work on the technologies that we need to get to, the advances in decarbonization that are so crucial.
Are they ahead of us in terms of that development? Because they do have a higher level of penetration by wind and solar. Do they not?
Well, they have the best, and by promoting it so much in the last 15 years, basically, they've driven the price of solar cells, solar photovoltaics so much that it becomes truly a feasible technology all over the world. So we give China a lot of credit for taking on that early production, dramatically scaling it up, and now making it available for Africa, for New York City, or for other
And that's
places.
always been the challenge to make it price competitive.
Solyndra
The
works in
prices went
China.
down by factor 100 since the late 1970s. It used to cost about $70 per watt of solar power. Now it's down to about 70 cents. This is an incredible breakthrough.
Is storage capacity a big problem?
When you have any kind of intermittent energy like wind and solar, it's not blowing all the time. That makes it very hard to run a power grid on that basis unless there is storage. And of course, the other place where we need storage is under the hood. If we're going to have electric vehicles that really perform the way people would like their automobiles to perform, and we have some great new electric vehicles, of course, on the market, but batteries are key. Storage, faster recharging of the batteries, longer range, all of this is very important.
Hasn't Elon Musk announced some development plans for the home, battery-powered home?
Elon, maybe our premier entrepreneur right now in the United States, because he's doing SpaceX, he's doing Tesla, and he just announced last week that because of their expertise in batteries, he's going to now be moving into the home market for storage so that if people are living off-grid, that they can rely on wind or solar where they are and then store the energy. Or he's also saying that if people are worried about backup energy sources in case of the grid failure and so forth. So yes, he's moving in that direction. I spoke with him recently, and he said, when I asked, what do you need for the breakthrough in electric vehicles just to finally sweep the market? He said the answer is batteries. And he gave me all the specs, and he said, we're on the case, we're on the direction, we're going to make it. If there were also scientific investments being made, this would, of course, speed the breakthroughs, but he was pretty confident that we're going to get there.
Would that be an appropriate area to be part of the federal budget?
Absolutely.
Encouragement of battery technology.
Absolutely. We spend about
As a
30
national priority.
completely. We spend about $30 billion a year right now on biomedical research through the National Institutes of Health. But when it comes to clean energy, decarbonized energy, it's about 1/10 of that, about $3 billion a year. And yet, we have a $100 trillion world economy that depends on decarbonization. So we haven't quite meshed the unbelievably high stakes we have in the energy transition with the R&D that goes into it. And what we know from our experience in this country is that when the government has been determined to make a breakthrough, for instance, the Human Genome Project, or the mission to space, or promoting computers and internet, of course, it hasn't done it by itself, but it's been fundamental in working together with the private sector to make the huge breakthroughs.
You also, beyond the tax on carbon, which can be done in a number of ways, are calling for raising the federal tax on gasoline sold at the pump.
We're stuck, of course. We have an 18.4 cent a gallon tax on gasoline, which is the same as it's been at the nominal level, not adjusting for inflation, since 1993. Now, in the U.S., we have an added problem, which is that we use that gasoline tax to repair our roads, for the Federal Highway Trust Fund, which is broke this spring. So we basically have bankrupted our capacity to manage our modern infrastructure in this country. It's mind-boggling. We have by far the lowest gasoline taxes of any country in the world, but we haven't even kept pace with inflation, much less raise the revenues to help keep the infrastructure intact.
Is it the case that Republicans and Democrats can agree on the need to repair the infrastructure, especially things that are glaring like major highways and the electric grid and bridges, for example, but they can't agree on the way to finance it? The goals are the same, but the financing...
Sure, one could say that. Everyone...
But is it true or not?
You don't know, because if they're opposing a practical measure, which is the way we've been financing infrastructure for decades, I don't know whether one can really say that they share the goal. So I would say to Congress right now is the moment. The trust fund is empty. World oil prices have come down so far just in the last few months that if we raised the gasoline,
and then they went back up
a little bit, yeah, they started here, they fell to here, now they come back a little bit. But if we raise the gasoline price, we'd still be so much better off than we were 8 or 9 months ago. Consumers would still be enjoying the scene right now, and yet we would be able to fund our infrastructure once again. So it's a kind of paralysis, which we're getting used to.
So what's the impact of shale gas on this? Shale gas and oil?
On the one hand, shale gas has lowered world prices of oil and gas, and especially in the U.S., because this is the center of it. We became not only the most successful in this technology, and by some measures the largest overall, but we have, because of this, driven down world prices tremendously, with an added huge benefit to consumers. All good, one would say, except for two things. Gas is not the end stop for solving the climate crisis at all. People point out rightly that gas is cleaner than coal, but gas is nowhere good enough in terms of low carbon.
Do we need a kind of man on the moon project here?
Well, I grew up with the man on the moon project, listening to every space shot or watching every space shot. It was brilliant. President Kennedy said in early 1961 that we'll put a man on the moon and return him back safely to Earth before the end of the decade. That spirit, absolutely we need. But this time, it's a little more complicated, because we have several different types of technology, and we have a private sector alongside the public sector. And it's not just the U.S., it's the world. But the spirit of the moonshot, absolutely, we need that. We need to say, for our safety, we need to move to low-carbon energy, and we can get there.
China's building a lot of coal power plants.
China is actually peaking in coal, and it's building a lot of nuclear and a lot of renewables now. And so the Chinese leadership, partly because the air is so dirty, has said, we're moving away from coal, and they are promising to limit coal. They probably could have peak coal that is reach the maximum and then start down just within the next few years. And I think that this is a huge, huge step forward. It's why China and the U.S. can work together to find a real solution.
What scientific link is there between climate change, global warming, and what we're seeing in terms of hurricanes and storms? And remember, when Hurricane Sandy hit, the question was raised, is this a consequence? And people said, you can't say that it was a consequence, a one-to-one consequence, but it reflects something.
Yes. So I would try to summarize a debate point. First, when Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, hit the east coast of the U.S., that storm